Hello biologists and welcome back. This is going to be our first example in a series of examples about all the different non-Mendelian crosses that we're going to be doing. And this first one is, I'm not going to spoil it quite yet, you can probably read the title, but this is the first case we're going to look at for non-Mendelian genetics. And non-Mendelian, what we mean by that is it's not going to be classic dominant and recessive, one's going to mask the other, all that stuff that you've been doing for the last couple of weeks and been doing great on. This is very similar, but there's going to be like twists thrown in for each type of example that you have to keep in your mind. I will also suggest before you get too far into these videos, do read over the lesson that is posted as well, because if you take the note frame and lesson and fill it in, it'll help you along your way, and you'll be able to spot the inheritance pattern, which is something we're going to keep working on. So let's read this carefully. It says curly hair is partially dominant over straight hair. However, the heterozygous trait produces wavy hair. So already here we see something a little bit different than what we're used to. So if a mother with wavy hair is crossed with a wavy-haired father, well, that's a wavy, they must have waved at each other. What type of hair would the children have? Find the genotypic ratio and phenotypic ratio. Before we dive right into alleles and stuff here, I just want to visually outline what we got going on. So we have the one trait, which is straight hair. This is the recessive trait. So we just have like very straight hair. That's going to be recessive. Then in the middle, we have this heterozygous trait that's like wavy. I don't know how natural that hair is, but just pretend that it is, even though it has an ombre. And then we have Zendaya here with curly hair, smiling at us and looking all like suspicious kind. Then we're gonna circle here the heterozygous trait produces wavy hair. What we see here is incomplete dominance. This is not just curly hair being dominant over straight hair. We have this little like in between state where it's still like somewhat curly, but it's not all the way curly. It's like dominant, but not completely masking the straight phenotype. It's a blend of the two. So, three phenotypes, only two alleles. This is a pattern of incomplete dominance, and something to look for here is we do not see both traits individually. Instead, we sort of see a blend of the two, and this is typical of incomplete dominance. I think the example in your notes has like a pink flower coming off of a red and a white one. So same thing here, we kind of have a middle ground as the heterozygote, as the wavy hair, even though we have like an incompletely dominant curly hair over here, and a recessive straight hair. The zygote is kind of an in-between, so we call that incomplete dominance, because it's not completely dominant. Cool. So I'm just going to, again, outline these steps that we used to use all the time at the beginning of this unit when you were first getting used to making Punnett squares, but now I've added a different step one. Let's go ahead and let that do a little dance there. But before we actually define alleles, what you're going to see is depending on the pattern of inheritance we use, the alleles are going to be written differently. These ones are still pretty alright for incomplete dominance, but as we get into like codominance and multiple alleles and things like that, we're going to have to do different types of notation. So before we can define our alleles and do the notation, we have to figure out what we're working with, and that will guide how we answer the rest of our question. So again, here we determined, if we go back, that we were using incomplete dominance because we have a heterozygous trait that's sort of a blend of a dominant and recessive trait. So that's our pattern. We're going to let that do the dance again. And now we're just going to go through solving this like normal. Except the big difference here is we're just going to have to find the pattern first. So curly hair is partially dominant over straight hair, however the heterozygous trait produces wavy hair. If a mother with wavy hair is crossed with a wavy-haired father, what type of hair will the children have? Find the GR and PR. I expect you to know by this point that means genotypic ratio and phenotypic ratio. Alright, so I'm going to do that whole thing where you have an opportunity to pause it before each step, and then I'll go over them. Because you can use these as sort of extra practice in addition to like the practice books where you get instant feedback and explanation, so it could help you to try this instead of just watching it right away. So I'll give you a second to pause it here and try to define the alleles, and then come back in about 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2. Ooh, came in at 2. Oh, no, check anyways. Okay. So 1, we're going to have curly. It's incompletely dominant. I'm just using H's for hair because H stands for hair and they look different in lowercase and uppercase. then we're saying straight to the recessive one, so we got a lowercase h. So whatever letters used are fine, just make sure you have it sort of set up along the same lines. Now, I'm going to give you a second to determine the parent genotypes and gametes, do steps 3 and 4. And then we'll come back together and look at the Punnett square. So I'm going to give you another 5 seconds to pause it and attempt to figure out the parent genotypes and gametes. So we'll come back in 5, 4, 3, 2, and here we are. So the male here and the female, they're both wavy, and that makes them heterozygous. So that makes them an uppercase and a lowercase letter, or a dominant and recessive gene. So this is all the same as what we've been doing up to this point. We're going to have the two heterozygotes, and that means they can both produce either gamete. Then using those, we have to make our Punnett square. So try to finish this question off using these gametes here. Set up the Punnett square, and then define the genotypic and phenotypic ratios. Then we'll come back together in a few moments here and take a look at how that all maps out. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there's our Punnett square, and we're going to add the female on top. They're the same here, so won't be much difference there, and the male on the side. Then we're going to do these crosses, so we get homozygous dominant and heterozygous. We get another heterozygous and a homozygous recessive. Now interpret these. If you've already done that, just hang on for a second. If you haven't done this last step here, knowing the genotypes of the offspring, just try to define their genotypic and phenotypic ratios. And then we'll come back in like 3, 2, 1. Okay, so our genotypic ratios, these are the exact same as we have been doing. We're just going to count the total possibilities and how many times we see what we're interested in. So we have 1 out of 4 are homozygous dominant, 1 out of 2, since 2 out of 4 are heterozygous, and 1 out of 4 is homozygous recessive. Now the phenotypes are where it changes a bit. If this was normal dominance, all of these three would be the same. But because we have a blending for the heterozygotes, we have a bit of a different case here, and that's why this is incomplete dominance and not just normal Mendelian dominance. So phenotypic ratio, we have 25% curly hair, that's the homozygous dominant right here. We have 50% wavy hair, they are the heterozygotes right here. And then we have 25% straight hair, which is the homozygous recessive. So, yeah, keep feeling free to coming back to this video. I'm going to post a bunch of examples just to kind of give you context, because a lot of practice is going to go up throughout this non-Mendellian section and forward, where you'll have to be able to pick out the patterns and be able to like notate them. So your best tools to do that as you're learning are going to be the lecture notes that are posted, because they go over each case as well. Then these videos, and then ultimately the keys that'll get posted for the assignments. But start with the notes in these videos and see how you can do. If you have questions at any point, email me, mrbsciencemb@gmail.com, and I'm happy to help you out. So that's all for this video. Stay tuned for the rest that are coming shortly, and have a lovely day. Thanks, biologists.